In this video, I am showing you a time-lapse of one of my commissions. If you have seen my channel or even know my work, you know I have a deep passion for drawing animals, especially commissioned pet portraits. I'm not limited to animals, but it's my favorite subject. So when I got this commission, it was something new. The last building I remember drawing was a church made with watercolors. This was perhaps 5 to 6 years ago. It was a gift to a member of the church. This was to be a challenge, adding in details to create the bricks and stones on the walls of the house using colored pencils. After taking a look at the piece as a whole, I felt it best to start with the red bricks, and after debating how I should create this texture, I was led to use the technique of precise layering, then used my craft knife to create the small details. I started off by adding a thick layer of a cream color. Then I went in with nectar, rosy beige, Hannah, and a bit of chestnut. I also topped it off with a dark gray. As I layer, I keep in mind that with the light colored layers, especially the first one, it's difficult to add in the dark colors. It's not as rich in color, it looks a bit smudgy, and it has to be worked on with more light colors to blend and smooth it out. As you may notice, I find myself redoing these areas a few times, usually when working on a drawing. Even with animal portraits, I must get a feel for the textures I need to create and how I must go about it to create them. Usually the first hour or two is working quite slowly, getting a feel for this. And once I nail the texture down and how I create it, with a bit more practice, I pick up my pace, it not taking as long as it did for a new section than a section I worked on when I first began the drawing. Once I got these colors down and how I wanted to present them, I went in with my craft knife. And even with this tool, it was all trial and error at first. I had to get a feel for what I was trying to create. You'll see me consistently go over the areas I scratched off the layering of colored pencils with new colors, only to re-scratch them off in a way that better fits what texture I'm trying to create. When using a craft knife, I find it easiest to layer with the lightest color possible. For the bricks, I used a cream color, even if you look at a brick and you don't see this color. This color is only meant to create that smooth first base, which will make it easier to scratch off the other layers. From experience, I noticed that when I dive into dark colors immediately and plan on using a craft knife, it doesn't turn out well. With a lighter color for a base color, it creates a smooth texture. Adding colors on builds layer. When going in with the craft knife, it removes all the layers except for the bottom layer. It's difficult to scratch off areas of colored pencil of dark colors without a base layer of a lighter color, because the only thing that is under the dark layer is the paper. This results in the paper tearing, and the smooth details you hope to create come out scratchy. You can't go into a drawing hoping to use a shortcut. Yes, the craft knife makes it easier and less tedious for the details, but it enhances the drawing in a way that I can't copy without the tool. And that is exactly what a craft knife is. It's a tool. It doesn't replace the drawing process, but it's used to help you during the drawing process. You can't go into a drawing with a craft knife hoping for a shortcut. This tool makes it easier to create such fine details, but it can't replace the process of layering, creating textures, and using techniques. If you do this, it won't turn out as good, and you'll end up ruining your drawing. You still need to put your time into the drawing, putting forth much consideration and effort in making the drawing the best to your ability. Now that the bricks are done, I dive into the roof, which I use the same technique as I did for the bricks. I started off with a base layer of 10% cool gray, then added in layers of 50% cool gray, periwinkle, 90% of cool gray, then topping it off with details made with black. I then used the craft knife to scratch off areas to create highlights. To create the bricks, I used the craft knife to create fine details that were white due to the shaving off the top layers. To create the roof, I need to use the craft knife for adding in highlights, especially since the small details in the roofing are black, a color darker than the color of the roof. Now, I'll move on to the two stone walls. I use the same techniques as with the bricks and roof. I use a light French gray as the base and use darker shades of French gray as the other layers. I then go in with a 90% French gray to outline the stones. I used black and shades of pink to color stones here and there, as in the reference photo, then used white to highlight the top of the stones, and even went in with a craft knife for certain areas. Then I begin working on the front door of the house, and then move on to all of the windows. Once more, I use the same layering technique. I go in with my lightest color, which is white, move on to some grays, then some blacks. Then I use the craft knife to make the window blinds and the white lines that go throughout the window. And here I take a break from the windows, fill in that sidewalk and the garden area with browns and even a dark maroon purple. With everything done on that house, except for that last window, I move on to adding in those plants and trees in the front garden. And as with everything else on the house that I have created, I really work on building up layers with all these bushes and trees. I start with my lighter greens and purples, then move on to my darker colors and go in with the craft knife to create more details within the leaves. Then I quickly finish up that last window in any details that I might have missed, and then begin the sidewalk and the front lawn. I then color the sky with a gray and light blue, then add in both the trees on each side of the house. And here is the finished product. Please comment down below any ideas for future videos.